Would you mind introducing yourself and telling us all a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, my name's Yizz, as you can see. I go by Yizz the Eunuch. That's my online name, and that will become apparent why here in a little while. I am I guess you could call me just a regular content creator. I have a podcast. I make videos. I talk to other people, such as yourself. What led me to doing this was many, many, many years ago. I realized there was a very ugly mixture of an anti-white animus and white guilt that was sort of all in everything in our culture, in our media, in schools, and everything. And I wanted to see if I was alone. I made a channel to talk about it. I wanted to see who else out there wanted to do something constructive about this that wasn't, just an unsavory type or wasn't an idiot. And it led me to becoming an advocate for white well being. I want with my work, I want to encourage people to make decisions and live good lives based on truth and reality. And I want people to love themselves, love their folk, love their heritage, because everyone should, and that includes white people. So that's what I do. I'm also an entertainer. I'm a comedian. I like jokes and memes and things. So my mainstream Monday nights, Discordant Dragons, which you've been on many
Mm-hmm.
times. That's sort of my mainstream each week. And the reason that I'm here today is I am intersex. So we'll start there.
Which I,
Back to you.
which I don't think should matter, honestly, but it does matter to the scholars. But it, it also
Mhm.
does probably matter in some ways, as you've told me before, that it's important to get the real takes of people, the real opinions of people, if you're going to be speaking for them, as these scholars in fact try to do, which is why I reached out to you over this. So, the
Mhm.
authors of this study responded to comments that they've received that stated that sex or gender is binary by saying that 1 in 100 people have intersex characteristics and that the entire idea of gender difference is an outdated and false contention. So, first, what do you think about that 1 in 100 statistic?
Well, to me, that sounds ludicrous. I don't even think 1 in 100 people are homosexual, let alone the more unique unicorns in the alphabet mafia. The way that it was explained to me in the 90s, when I first got help, it was from a husband and wife team that had a private practice. And for 30 years, they had worked with fertility issues, hormone issues, intersex problems, gonadular development issues, primarily with females, but sometimes males too. And the way it was told to me is that intersex conditions are probably only between 1 in 50 to 1 in 80,000 births. And there are, at the time, he told me there were like 15 or 16 major intersex conditions. And the number 1 in 100 is just absolutely laughable. And I think that the weasel word there for that 1 in 100 was intersex characteristic, because characteristic is not a scientific term really in this case. So they can call anything an intersex characteristic. Heavy eyebrows, being a tomboy. I don't know. Like they could call anything that. And we talked off air a little bit
Mm-hmm.
about it, and you said that not just personally you think it's bunko, but it was disproven later to be bunko, right?
Yes.
The study that 1 in 100 comes from. Yeah.
So, yes, it was, well, it was contested. However, the scholar who published that 1 in 100 statistic in her original paper in 2001 republished it in 2020 with no revisions. So, who knows? She was
Hmm.
debunked in 2003 by another scholar, Sachs, who is cited in my research. But what
Hmm.
he was talking about, and what the original scholar was talking about, the original author who claimed the 1 in 100 statistic included all chromosomal, hormonal, and biological structural abnormalities into her figure there, the most common of which was late onset congenital adrenal hyperplasia, which causes excess androgen production and thus rarely even presents with any symptoms in those with XY
Hmm.
chromosomes, and most commonly causes male pattern baldness in those with XX chromosomes. That condition represents 1.5% of the 1.7% statistic that claim of 1 in 100 people comes from.
So that's like what, 85, 86% of the whole
It
thing?
is 88% of all
88%.
claimed intersex disorders is this specific disorder that causes an excess production of androgen, and which is not actually caused by a chromosomal disorder. It's excess androgen
Yeah, that
production.
that to me, that doesn't sound like an intersex condition, and there were other weasel words in there
Mm-hmm.
too, like structural abnormalities. So what? A heart defect or vascular problems? You're saying that's intersex too? Like I don't buy it.
Well,
I think that's bunko.
she's specifically using vaginal agenesis, which is when the vagina does not completely form in utero. It is a completely XX female chromosomally. However, there
Mhm.
is a birth defect that causes the vagina to not completely form as it would in a otherwise healthy baby female. But it is a female baby that is completely XX. She is also using that in her calculations to come to that
Well,
conclusion.
to let everybody know, I'm not a researcher. I don't work in medicine. I'm not a doctor or a scientist, but um, I was told a lot about intersex conditions, and of course, I've lived with it for years. So, you know, I have probably more experience with it than your average bear, and I don't think that anybody sensible that I would respect in medicine would say minor things that are not directly involved with gonad and genital mutations and chromosomal mutations. Anything outside of that, I don't think would technically be intersex, because that's the only thing that technically is intersex, because sex means your sex, your genetics, and what makes you male or female, which is your gonads and your genitals. So that's, again, I could talk about that longer, but I don't think that that's why I'm here. I'm here to give my opinion on the study and the silly claims in it and the comments in it. So, um, but before we move further, I don't want to go into too much detail, but I will share with you the kind of intersex I am, and it goes nicely with the second claim after the 1 in 100 thing about the binary gendered being false or not supported by modern science or whatever it was. I think that's crap. I think that's a lie. Um, I'm male, by the way. I'm a male that looks kind of like a woman, I guess, and I have lived as a woman most of my adult life since a teenager. Um, the issue that I had was gonadular hermaphroditism. Used to be called hermaphroditism. In the modern era, it's called ovotestes. It's where when you're born, I'm XXY, male ovotestes are XXY. It's where your gonads, or in most cases, one of your gonads is an ovary with a functional testicle inside of it, and then the other one will just be a small atrophied or mutated testy that's not very functional or not functional at all, which was my case. And it causes severe problems in adolescence because your X chromosome and your Y chromosome both kind of activate, and they try to do start and stop male and female puberties back and forth. And so my adolescence was hell. I had night terrors, hot flashes, rage, anger, confusion, paranoia. It was misery. And until I got help for that, my parents didn't know what to do. It was really rough. It was an all around hard time. And to not go into too much detail about my body and stuff, I haven't had any surgeries. This is just how I developed. I don't have an Adam's apple. I grew breasts and hips like a woman. It was a weird, hard time for me, especially here in rural Appalachia. So it's not, this kind of thing is not a fad. It's not an identity. It's not something that should be celebrated or treated like it's normal. And I think that the people that are behind these kind of studies want to normalize the abnormal and encourage delusions for their own ideological ends. And when I sought medical help, insurance didn't cover me. And so as I became older, 19, 20, 21, I got introduced to and became part of what I call the alphabet mafia activists. And I noticed that they believed in things that weren't true, and that science at the time didn't agree with either, even though now it's starting to, and has for a while. And so I quickly learned that people like the woman who made this study, they do not have help and assistance and do no harm in mind. They have political, ideological agenda in mind, and they want to use people like me as their smoking gun or missing link proof for their nonsensical, delusional non-science. And that was hard for me because I had to be around people that on the surface seemed like me and they thought I was one of them, so they would talk openly around me, and they would say very ugly, untoward things about pretty much everything that I hold dear: normalcy, traditional living, Christianity. They would say things like, we can only make more of us by stealing theirs, and they would celebrate, converting children and stuff. Really, really sick
Really?
stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not
And
shocked, but
and remember, this is going back to the early
yeah.
aughts, and it was a very ugly thing for me to learn back then because, I was young and I thought that, hey, these people say they want to help me, they want to advocate for me to get, my insurance to cover the annual treatments that I need and that kind of thing. And it was just a very ugly, eye-opening experience that the people involved in this, in academia and medicine, and these alphabet mafia advocates, they don't want to help at all. They just want to do anything that forwards their agenda. And people like me and the people who have genuine cross-sex or trans-sex issues, they don't help them. They only hurt them. The vast majority of everyone that I met that were trans, they were just confused and abused young people, and they were not being helped at all. They were being encouraged. Their delusions and their problems were being not just encouraged, but rewarded by nurses and doctors and psychiatrists that were all part of this alphabet mafia. It was very sick. It was very sick what I discovered. And thank you for having me on to talk about it, because I think that this is what they don't want you to know. They don't want you to hear about this because it hurts their narrative and it disempowers the thing that they push, which is they're trying to push transgenderism on people younger and younger and younger. And they use people like me as scientific proof that what they're saying is valid when it's not.
But that's why I so much, you and I have known each other for years, and
It's been about 4 years now, I
yeah,
think. Yeah.
and what I've always been curious about, and I've asked you about before, but to reiterate, is it how does it make you feel that people like yourself are being put into a box, and not only being put into a box, but you're being used, like as these scholars are using you as a way to promote their ideology, and as an explanation and response to regular students who came back to them and said, no, gender is a binary. And then their response is, no, but there are intersex people. Therefore, you're wrong. That there is no binary because intersex people exist.
When I was younger, I got angry about it. But in the last 15 years, I've learned that this is not unique to the alphabet mafia. This is what society has become. It has become using people to forward agendas, and it's very sad. So now that I'm older, it just makes me sad. And I hope that one day people with sense will be the ones in the driver's seat again, and that we can have a healthier, functional civilization. Because, I mean, we'll get into it when we get to the comments, but I have things to say about what this is doing to culture at large. But we'll get to that when we get to the comments. But in regards to how it makes me feel, it just makes me feel sad that I know there are thousands and thousands of ideologically driven people that were confused and cajoled and basically groomed from birth to be this kind of academician, to be this kind of activist. And they are only furthering the harm and the sadness and the delusions of desperate, sad, troubled, or in some cases, medically sick young people. And that's just sad.
I agree. I personally, I don't think it's fair of them to speak for you. And that's interesting is that one of the reasons why I asked you to speak on this is because I would not be allowed to comment on this kind of stuff because I'm a cisgender white woman. And so I wouldn't
Well,
be.
I certainly wouldn't call you that. But
Oh no, you wouldn't.
I don't like
wouldn't want to
that.
shame me.
I don't. No, I don't like that rhetoric.
I know.
I don't. I mean, even though technically cis just means matching or same in the Latin, like I understand why they use it as a prefix, but it's acting like the reason I don't like the word games is when you utilize hostile terminology,
Mm-hmm.
you legitimize hostile ideology. And so that's why I don't call myself trans. I don't pretend to be part of the alphabet mafia. And I certainly don't use words like cisgender,
Yeah.
because that acts like gender is not real or malleable or something.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's used as an attack form against anyone who goes against the agenda.
Yeah.
So I don't utilize hostile terminology because it legitimizes hostile ideology. So
Well,
I would never call you cis.
well, that's oh no, I call you sis. Come on, like But what I mean is,
Well, okay, if it's short for sister, that's different. All
sure.
right.
The point is though that the reason why I've asked
Yeah.
you to talk to me about this is because they would not. These kinds of people would not allow me to have an opinion, even if I'm just reading data, even if I'm just reading scientific literature. My opinion doesn't matter because I don't have
Yeah.
a lived experience as a transgender or gender nonconforming person, and I certainly don't have an experience as an intersex person. So it's very curious to me when they are speaking about transgender and gender nonconforming topics, and then in
Hmm.
response, they got people who said that there are two sexes, that there are two genders. And in
Hmm.
response, they bring up intersex people, of which you are one, seemingly with
Hmm.
no real concern as to how intersex people feel about any of this. They use,
Well,
it seems to me that they use intersex people as a kind of cover for anything else that they want to do
they do.
ideologically.
They do, but we've already covered
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
So to elaborate a little more on the gender binary,
Hmm.
sex binary, and how people that, according to the study, the people who were gender nonconforming or whatever it is they said that they were, they also said that gender binary is real. And again, I will cite my experiences with these people. The activist types, these transgender ideology people that started taking over in the aughts, all through medicine and insurance and psychology and everything, the few genuine different people, like I do believe that some people, very few as they are genuinely born transsex or homosex, right? Like they do genuinely have those issues from birth, but they're very few and far between. And those people, especially the transsexual people who have been either messed up in usually in the mind, but also sometimes with the body from childhood, they also do not like this movement, this ideology that seeks to erase or annul gender. Because if you are a genuine transsex person, then you know that you have to pick one. You are between two things. So those two things have to exist. And these people that want to make light of that and say that it's either a social construct or there is no real sex, it's the same thing about these people that say there is no race and like that racial genetic differences don't make any difference. Well, people that work in medicine and healthcare know that's not true, because you need to know someone's ethnic genetic background makeup to know what genetic disorders they might be prone to know how different medications interact with certain types of human genetics that are different across ethnic and racial lines. So when these people seek to annul that, they annul the struggle and the problems that people like me and these transsex people have, the genuine ones, not the sad delusional people that have been talked into it, but the few genuine ones that I met, they also didn't like this gender doesn't real stuff that
Hmm.
they're pushing, because it just completely bulldozes away all of their struggle, all of their identity problems, and it makes light of it like it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter to these activists. Remember that. These
Hmm.
ideologically driven people like made this study, they don't care about the
No.
transsex people, they don't care about the intersex people. They're just going to use us for their ends. And none of us that are genuine, down to earth, sensible people, whether we're heterosexual, homosexual, intersex, transsex, none of us who understand and don't live in a delusion, we all believe that gender is binary and that you are the sex you were born, and that's just how it is. It doesn't matter what medication you take or what surgeries you get, you are male or female, uh, as you were born, as God made you, whatever you believe, you are that until the day you die. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Hmm.
Your genes are your genes, your body is your body, and that's what you have. And so even transsex, intersex people, and homosexual people I've talked to, the ones that are not lunatics, the ones that don't buy into this, they believe that too.
Yeah.
And And the people that make this study, they don't want to hear that. So they want to silence me and call me names just like they call you names.
100%. Well, I guess we'll find out about the last part because we'll see. We'll see if they want to call you names, is because well, um
Oh, they always do. They
well
have for a long time.
I
I've been called every naughty name in the book from well, I
yeah
won't repeat
well
ugly anti-white
I'm
slurs here,
well because
but
of course
I've been
they
called pretty much every anti-white slur in the book, and it always comes from this alphabet mafia or
oh
these leftoids.
interesting,
It
isn't
always
it?
comes from them. It doesn't come from sensible, normal people.
Interesting, isn't it? So speaking of which, did you have any specific comments about the comments? Excuse me, let me restate that. One second, one
Yeah,
second.
I.
1 second, let me restate
All right.
it.
Okay.
Let me
Okay.
restate.
Okay.
Did you have did you have any specific thoughts about the comments that were left on the study? And would you consider them to be malicious?
First of all, no, they're definitely not malicious. Obviously, they're malicious to this person because they live in their own
Mm-hmm.
ideological bubble. Um, but no, the only borderline malicious comments that I saw of all the ones that we looked at together were the jokey, trolly 4chan ones, like identifying as an attack helicopter and
Mm-hmm.
saying, dumb things. I wouldn't consider that malicious. That's just people having fun doing 4chan stuff. That's not malicious. But no, the many serious comments that we looked at together, they were not malicious at all. They were just contradictory. And you can tell someone lives in an ideological bubble when contradiction and criticism they interpret as a malicious attack. And so it's very obvious how ideologically driven and what kind of delusional
Yeah.
bubble the person who made this study lives in when they ask a trans or an intersex person for their opinion. And then when that person's opinion doesn't align with theirs, they call it malicious.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's childish. That's
Yeah,
childish, immature, and someone like that has no business having any clout at all in academia.
I agree. And speaking of, do you have yourself any comments for the authors of this study who have claimed that they are the victims of attack because they've received some nasty comments?
A younger me might have said something ugly, but I have gotten kinder and wiser in my age, and I believe that people who do evil oftentimes don't realize they are.
Mm.
And I think that everyone can be redeemed. Everyone that's not, born with, a bad brain that makes them a crazy murderer or something. Like most people are not like that. And even people like this woman that made the study who is ideologically driven, who lives in a bubble of delusion, I think that she can stop being evil. And I believe that anybody can. So if she ever hears my words, and if anybody that worked on this study or is part of the alphabet mafia hears me, you can stop living a lie. You can stop pushing lies and encouraging harmful delusions in young people. You don't have to do that anymore. And you can do like I do and speak positively and with love to try to fix these problems. I know that you might have been a part of this ugly movement for a long time. It might have been what defined you for many years, but you can walk away from that. You can choose to do what's right. You can choose to be a better person, a good person who cares about others and stops these harmful lies. And I hope and pray that you do and that you make better choices. I did, and my life is better for it. And I want that for you too.
Thank you so much, Yiz. I really, we've been through a couple of times trying to record this. Now it's definitely
Yeah.
saved. I have a local copy, hopefully, but also
Yeah.
another copy. And I agree with what you said 100%. And Dr. Andrea Haverkamp et al. And the rest of your colleagues, particularly Dr. Quilly Driscoll and Finn Johnson, I think that you really should listen to what Yiz has had to say. She is not being in any
I
way
hope they do.
aggressive towards you, and I hope you don't get upset
And I'm
by.
certainly not being malicious.
No, nor am I. By the way, my complete destruction of your paper is not malicious, and that's why I think I've tried to have people on to talk about it. Is because I I'm not trying to hurt you in any way. I want you to see the error of your ways And that's why
Hmm.
Yiz has been so gracious to join me on this and to give her opinions. Because maybe you need to, it's time for you to get outside of your own bubble and understand that maybe you shouldn't speak for everyone using your position on your ivory tower pedestal, right? If you're going to be pretend to be a social scientist, then maybe you need to actually go and talk to people rather than pretend as if you understand how people feel universally because
Yeah.
it's not
And I
useful.
hope that they listen, and I hope that they decide to do
Yeah.
well, because we all make
Yeah.
mistakes. We all believe things when we're younger that we shouldn't. And we can grow and we can become better people. And I was never an angel. I've done a lot of bad things. I've done things I'm not proud of. And I'm sure everybody listening to this feels similarly. And to these people that, maybe not even these people that worked on this paper, but any of you who work in academia or politics or business, you can say no to the anti-whiteism. You can say no to the male erasure of wanting to get rid of men and and promote this girl boss lie stuff. You can say no to that,
Mm-hmm.
and you can use your voice and your influence to right the wrongs that have been done to us.
Yep.
It starts with people like you who work in these places. You have to just say no, and you have to decide to do the right thing. It might not be easy, and you might put yourself at risk, but you need to do what's right. And I hope and pray that you do.
I
And I think I'll end it there.
I agree as well. Thank you so much, Yiz, for the third time trying to record this. And thank you all so much. Bye bye.